Assalamualaikum and hi, I to Dr. Danya and my fellow classmates. Our group, which is Group 6, we would like to present oyster culture in Malaysia. Before I jump to my topic, I would like to introduce my group member. Myself, my name is Khairun Sofia, followed by Amirul, Venessia, and Mariana. Then, this is the table content of our presentation. Next, I would like to ask you, do you know what is oyster? So, oyster is a mollusk with a soft body that are protected by a shell. It is a filter feeder that feeds on bacteria, zooplankton, and also decaying material. Oysters were cultured mainly for its culinary purposes and also for its pearl. Then I would like to share a little bit about oyster life cycle. So oysters were started from a larvae which will swim freely in the ocean to feed and grow. Then they will become a pedipelagic larvae that will sink to the bottom of the ocean and find for something hard to attach. Then, when they are attached to something, they will never move again and they will grow into an adult. When they were an adult, they will release their gametes into the water column where they are fertilized and grow into a larvae. Then the circle will be continued all over again. Next, this is the economic value of oyster in Malaysia by the year of 2019. The production of oyster in Malaysia were 1,568 tons, while the price were 30 to 35 ringgit Malaysia per kilogram, while the sale takes 50.6 million ringgit Malaysia, and that is a lot. So we can say that oyster culture in Malaysia is a really productive things to cultivate. Okay, so that's all from me. I would like to pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, I would like to talk about the oyster species in Malaysia. For oyster species in Malaysia, there are three genera commercially imported oyster are found in Malaysia, which is first we have Crassostauria, second we have Sarcostoria, and third we have Ostrea. For genus Crassostauria, we have two types of species. First is Crassostauria iridale, with the common name is sleeper oyster. This Crassostauria iridale, on the other hand, is common to blackish lagoon in the east coast state of Terengganu and Kelantan. The characteristic of this type of oyster species has black muscle skull and the flesh is white and slightly yellowish. For the second species for genus Crassostauria we have Crassostauria belcheri with the common name tropical oyster for English and siput tingkoyak for bahasa Melayu. This oyster is most common in the mangrove system of the west coast of Peninsula Malaysia, which is Kedah, Perak, and Johor. They have also reported to occur along the mangrove coast of Sabah. This oyster species has the muscle skull to yellowish in color, and the flesh is white and also yellowish in color. For the second genus, we have is Crassostauria. This genus have the species Crassostauria echinata with the common name spiny rock oyster. They are distributed along the estuarine and marine and intertidal regions of the east and west coast of Peninsula Malaysia. For the characteristic for this species of oyster, they most evident small size, measuring up to 5 centimeters. And for the third genus is Ostrea. We have the species with scientific name Ostrea folium. With the common names is defoliate oyster. The defoliate oyster has been described as a suicidal marine species inhabiting the outer coast of Peninsula Malaysia, which is Pulau Langkawi Kedah, where the salinity is over 30 ppt. The characteristic for this oyster species is individually can grow to 10 centimeter and they have a sexual reproduction. This species of oyster also they are sessile animal. For your information, the Crassoria hatchery, Crassoria iridale, and Sarcostoria species are usually harvested in Malaysia for human consumption. The species most valued for culture is Crassostoria iridale. That's all from me. Next, I will pass to Amirul for the next point.
Thank you, Mariana. For my part, I will present about method of oyster culture, or more likely the farming design. Oyster culture is divided into two parts, which is part collection and grow out. In this presentation, we will focus on grow out oyster culture. The first method of oyster culture is the rough culture. Oyster will be farmed vertically using this method. This method usually used in sheltered area to reduce the damage on the rough. Hard timber usually be used as the frame and mangrove pole as place to hang the tray. The oyster will be put in the tray before hung to the rough. Next method is rag culture. This method different from rough culture because the oyster will be farmed horizontally. The oyster will be put in the oyster grow out trays and will be placed at a small tidal range site to easier the harvesting process. And the last method is longline culture. Same as rag culture, the oyster also will be farmed horizontally. This method required plastic barrel that act as float and Netland tray to place the oyster. The Netland tray will be hung along the long line as you can see in the picture. Long line method usually be done in exposed area. And now we move to the farming design suggestion. Our group choose long line oyster farming as the best oyster culture method because this method have the cheapest cost among the other two culture methods, which it only need around 1,000 ringgit. Other than that, this method also promotes the oyster growth rate due to the better water circulation. If you remember, as I said before, this longline culture method usually used in exposed area. Lastly, the average service life of the Nathan tray is 10 years, which is quite reasonable. Okay, that's all from me. Now I will pass this presentation to Venessia. Thank you.
Thank you, Amirul. So I will explain about challenges and problems in oyster farming. So there are three challenges and problems. First is pet supply. Second is disease and mortalities. Third is processing and marketing. So these are explanation for the three challenges and problems in oyster farming. For pet supply, there are most of the oyster seeds used for farming in Malaysia was harvested from the wild, and currently Malaysia is facing serious problem in starting the industry due to insufficient seed stock. For your information, there was a stage that Malaysia was importing natural seed from Thailand and Myanmar, and now facing difficulties in obtaining natural seed from this country. The expansion of oyster farming industry in Malaysia could be much faster if not because of limited seed supply. Only hatchery production can provide the the required supply of seed both in terms of quantity and quality for the expansions of farming industry. Second is diseases and mortality. In spite of great importance of mollusks in the tropic, there is no publication on tropical mollusk disease so far. The occurrence of mollusk diseases differ with the temperate and tropical waters. Based on Elliston 1990 and Sediment 1970, the parasite known as Percissus marisus or dermoparasite that mostly infected on oyster tissues and caused oyster mortality. However, most of the reports are not temperate oyster species. There are many examples of the severe impact of disease outbreaks and mass mortality, which are increasingly recognized as a significant constraint to aquaculture production and trade. Lately, oyster growers in Sabah are experiencing mass mortality in their culture and yet to detect the cause of the mortality. Based on the study by Erazo Padagor, 2010, the genetic dermatoids, which is pneumatosis species, was found in sleeper oyster, which is Castrostrate iridale species of oyster. However, no in-depth study had been conducted on the diseases of oyster in the tropics. Last is processing and marketing. The researcher had been focused on the reproduction of oyster, leading to very little attention toward the processing and marketing issues faced especially by the small-scale growers. This is our group conclusion for the oyster farming in Malaysia. Oyster world production is 33.2%. It is clear that oyster have becoming a high demand mollusk, which have shown potential for population to increase oyster cultivation. Therefore, by burdening oyster cultivation will not just give profit to the breeder, but they will also help in increasing water quality. This is our group references. So, thank you for listening.